When you're going towards what you want, you're focused on your goals. When you're going away from what you don't want, you're looking at what you don't want, trying to get as further away from what you don't want, but your focus is still on what you don't want. Find your purpose early as you possibly can. Because once you find that purpose, that's your guiding compass on everything that you do.
Hey, everyone. Welcome to the Walk to Wealth podcast. If you're tuning in on YouTube or any of the podcast directories, make sure to do yourself one little favor. Make sure to give us a follow because you don't want to miss any of the amazing guests I'm bringing on this year. We haven't missed yet, and I don't plan on missing anytime soon. So let's get right into this one. Martin, for anyone who hasn't had the opportunity yet to get to know you, to get to meet you, brother, tell us your elevator pitch. Who are you and what do you do?
Hey, man, thank you for having me, John. Appreciate you. My name is Martin Perdomo. I go by the elite strategist. I like to consider myself a strategist. I'm a mindset strategist. I'm a real estate investor. I'm a father, husband, 21 years, and my purpose is to empower others to become better version of themselves. So I'm hoping that I can do that today.
Amazing, brother. And I had the opportunity to hop on your podcast, and we're going to talk about it later on today, but make sure to go check that out if you haven't done so already. But Martin, take us back to little Martin. What was it like growing up in your childhood? What was life like? What was your family like? What was the topics of like wealth, abundance? Like, where does this all stem from? What was it like growing up, man? Take us back.
So John, I'm 44 years old today. I'm going to be 45. I'm excited. I'm excited to be the age that I am. And I got to tell you, because I can look back. I'm actually going to be recording a podcast. And for those that don't know, my podcast is Latinos in Real Estate Investing Podcast. I'm actually going to be recording a podcast where I'm going to be sharing the top 15 lessons I've learned as a 15-year-old man, traveling in this world for 45-year-olds. I'm sorry, as a 45-year-old man, 15. Man, I got kicked out at 15. So as a 45-year-old man, and I'm going to be I'm recording that podcast for not my children. I have 4 kids, but for my grandchildren and my great-great-grandchildren, because I'm building generational wealth. And that's kind of what I want to talk to you about today a little bit. I'm going to go back to the beginning. I was, my mom came here pregnant with me from the Dominican Republic, and I think we both, our parents and are from DR. And my mom came here pregnant with me in 1978. And I was the firstborn American in my family. And because she came here, she had nothing. She had no place to live, nothing. She hadn't established herself. She sent me back home. And John, I want you to picture this and think about this for a minute. When I went back home to DR, we were so poor, all right, that when it rained, it would rain inside our house, right? Our roof was made of tin. We didn't have running water for toilet or washing our teeth or to cook. And every morning I had to wake up with my grandma and go walk a half a block and go bring water so we'd have water to brush our teeth, take a shower, and cook for the day. That's how poor we were. Then my mom at 5 years old had me come to she had us come to the U.S., my sister and I went to school here. I grew up in New York City in a place called Washington Heights, which is basically little Dominican Republic, right? And for those that are not familiar, Washington Heights is the hood, guys. There's drugs. I remember talking to a police officer in 1996, 97, and Giuliani was a mayor. For those of you that remember, Giuliani was a mayor when the Twin Towers came down. Giuliani was a mayor, and he cracked down on drugs. And a cop told me that there was more drugs in a 4-block radius from where I used to live, 160, 162nd, 160 to 164th Street in Washington Heights, New York City, than the whole state of New York. And I say that just to give you guys context, like how bad the neighborhood was. So anyways, I grew up in this place, and at 16, my mom kicked me out. Right? We grew up, I grew up, it was 5 of us. It was me, my stepbrother, my stepsister, my sister, and my little sister. And we lived in a 1-bedroom apartment in New York City, in Washington Heights. And the kitchen, we came here, we was just as poor. My mom split the kitchen in half. She created 2 bunk beds, and I would share a twin-size upper bunk bed with my brother. And my sister, my 2 older sisters, would share the twin-size bottom bunk, and my little sister would sleep in my mom's room with them. And at 16, my mom kicked me out on my 16th birthday, John. And at that point, my mom kicked me out 9 times. That was the 9th time she kicked me out. And I remember telling my mom, this is the last time you're going to kick me out. I'm never going to come back, right? And I did it, man. And from that time on, I slept for a little while. I slept in trains, rooftops, Rockaway Beach, just figuring it out, right? And I realized something really quick, John, while I was out there sleeping in trains. And I realized that as a 16-year-old kid, that a human being and an adult needs two things to survive: shelter and food. And I needed to figure it out. So I made an unconscious decision that I was going to buy a lot of real estate so that I don't ever have to go through that pain again, right? And that's what I've done in my career. I bought my first piece of real estate. I decided I was going to create wealth through real estate. I remember as a kid looking at those buildings that I used to live in. I used to work in Harlem, on 125th Street. And I remember my girlfriend at the time, which is my wife today, coming to pick me up one day, John. And Harlem was really a really bad area back in those days. It's still kind of rough. And I looked at a building. She came to get me, and I looked at a building across the street that was burned down. Right, so picture a burned down building with the windows broken, just a broken down window like you see in the movies and TV in the hood, just like that. And I remember telling my girlfriend, hey, hon, if I can buy that building and fix it and rent it, we could be rich. I can make a lot of money. And I was 17 years old, right? So I've had this vision always of creating wealth. I've always told my mom as a kid, Mom, I wasn't born to be poor. I'm going to be rich one day. And what I'm going after is wealth. I'm not going after being rich. I'm going after generational wealth. I'm going after one day, my great-great-grandchildren will hear this interview that I'm doing with you here today and can look back and say, that was when my great-great-grandfather was creating what we have today, this lifestyle that pattern. And that's kind of my journey. That's kind of the journey I'm on now.
Man, you have so many super powerful points I just want to touch on before we get into today's conversation. You mentioned that you knew from early on that you were meant for more. You knew from early on that you had a bigger purpose, that the poverty and the scarcity that you were brought into wasn't where you were going to end up, man. Where does that stem from? Where does that stem from? So many people have different names for it, but in your own words, where do you think that come from? Because for me, I always knew myself as well that, man, I'm cut different. I can't put why or how or what it was, but it's there's something in me that not a lot of people have in them. And I think it was tucked away for a little while, but then once I tapped into it, man, everything shifted. So it's for you, what do you think is the root cause of that?
I'm going to tell you, man, as a 45-year-old man now, for many, many years, I didn't know. At 19 years old. So remember, I kicked out at 16, right? At 18, I had my first kid, right? With my wife, with my girlfriend at the time. I had my first kid. And I was working in retail. And I hated the poverty. I hated not having enough money. And then at 20, I got my first big break. And I started selling life insurance. I got this opportunity. Let me tell you, man, my mindset, John, I was so poor, bro. Just to give you an example, if we was to ask a 16-year-old kid today, what's your dream car? They'd probably say a Ferrari or some shit like that, right? In my yearbook, 1996, when I graduated, I was looking at it the other day. And, what was the price of gas? What does a Snicker bar cost at that year and all of that? And one of the questions was, what is your dream car? You know what I put, bro? I put a Honda Civic. Those were my standards, right? That was, for me, that was a big thing, right? That was big. So that just shows you how low my standards were. I had a Honda Civic by the time I was 24. I had a brand new one because I made six figures at 24. But back to my story. At 19 years old, I got my first big opportunity. I never went to college. Don't have a college degree. Respect to those that do. I have my own perspective. I am self-educated. And at 19, when I went to start selling life insurance, I struggled, man. And we had two kids at this point, right? And there were months that it was all commission. You eat what you kill. And I'm grateful for that time. There were months that, dude, I didn't even have money to buy juice for the fridge, right? To put juice in our fridge, man, for our family. And I remember having this thing inside, I'm just meant for more. And I'm gonna be as respectful as I can here, but also being authentic. In the life insurance business, at that time, it was mostly old white men. Okay? 50s, in their 50s. Here is a 20-year-old kid from the hood, In my interview, during my interview, the GM said to my manager, the general manager said to my manager, I don't think you should hire this kid. He needs to go to grammar school before we hire him because he doesn't know how to speak proper English, right? I'm coming from the hood. I don't have an education, right? But what I had was I scored off the charts because of this drive I had, because of this. When I took all the aptitude tests, I just scored off the charts, right? There's this level of this drive, this charisma I have, this thing, this gift that God has given me. And God's also given it to you, right? And so they took the bet on me, but still I struggled. And man, through that time, I've always had this thing like, I'm meant for better. I'm meant for better. I just know. But what I didn't have was direction. What I didn't have was a mentor. What I didn't have was a male figure in my life. What I didn't have was anybody to teach me. I remember working at McDonald's, John, looking at these men coming in with suits. I was maybe 15, 16 years old at the time. And I would think in my head, hey, this guy's wearing a suit. He must be making good money. And I remember praying while I was sleeping in those trains, John. I remember praying to God, crying, literally saying, God, please just put the person, give me the right mentor. I didn't use those words, but put the person in my life that can teach me how to create wealth, how to create money so I can solve for this thing. I don't want anyone to give me anything. I just want someone to come in my life and teach me. And a few short years after I started working in that company selling life insurance, that person came in my life. And I was 23 years old at the time. And I'm going to share the story with you. This guy comes into the company, right? I was making $50,000 a year. I was starving with 3 kids at the time. I'm not making any money living in New York City. And this guy comes into the company, John, and he's making $70,000 a month in commission. Dude, a month. Now, here we are working for the same company, selling the same product. He's making $70K a month. I'm making $50,000 a year. But at 24 years old, you think you know it all. And I know you're a young guy, but at 24, 20 years old, me, especially a guy like me that's very competitive, that wants more, you think you know it all, and you're just like, if they could do it, I could do it. That's always been my motto. But I had a big ego, and I never wanted to go ask, how do you do it? And finally, I got so sick and tired of being broke, John, that I went to Harry and I said, hey, Harry, what do I need to do, man? How are you doing this and how am I not doing this, right? What the hell? We live in the same city, selling the same product. You're doing this. I'm starving and you're killing it. And he asked me a question. He said, you really want to know? I was like, yeah. And he said, go read this book. And he gave me this book to go read, right? He said, go read this book. And the name of that book for your listeners is The Magic of Thinking Big by David Schwartz. And at that point, I was rock bottom. It was just in a bad place financially. I picked up the book immediately, John. And my dream at that time was to make 6 figures, was to make $100,000. If I could make $100,000, I made it, right? Like that was only 3% of the population were making $100,000 in 1998. In 2003, I think when I first did it, 2003. So 2003, somewhere around it, 2002. And when I got the book, and 12 months after I read that book, I made $104,000 at the age of 24, right? And I've never looked back since. And that's when I discovered personal development. And that's when I really discovered that thing that you're trying to put a name for, that thing that tells you you're cut different, I'm different, right? That's when I discovered that power that I had in me. That's that ambition, that drive, wanting to do and be more. And that's when I discovered personal development. And I would just, I would pray for many, many years, John, that I needed someone to come in my life and teach me. And now that I've accomplished a lot, multi-million-dollar business, own a bunch of real estate, and, all these things I've accomplished in my life. Now I have a podcast and I do a lot of speaking engagement. I do a lot of teaching. And it's because of that young version of me that was praying and asking for this older version of me to show up and teach them. So now I want to be that resource for others to teach them and help them create wealth.
Yeah, man, I love your story. And 2 main reasons. 1, because I resonate with it so much, but 2, because I know a good story when I can hear one, right? I've been doing a lot of research into storytelling and Joseph Campbell, and because I'm getting into public speaking now, and so I'm constantly trying to fine tune my craft as well. And one of these steps in the hero's journey is the guide. Like, that's what like Yoda and Luke Skywalker, like everyone needs that Yoda in their life to step in and not to tell them what to do necessarily, but to just point them in the right direction, man. Like, not to do the work for you, but to just give you like a little clue or hint to just know that you're on the right track. Or sometimes it may even just be like a affirmation that you're on the right path. They might not even help you. They might just let you know like, hey, you're doing the right thing. Keep going. And it's like, it takes having that Yoda for us to really start finding our track, because, you know, we don't know it all. And one of the things I love is Eastern philosophy, man. I'm not the most astute philosopher, but like them Eastern philosophers, like, them guys are geniuses. Like, one of my favorite quotes Socrates says is, I know that I do not know. Yeah. And it's like, you know, or the more that you learn, the more you realize how much you don't know. There's so many different ways to say it, but it's like, for me, it's just like, as I go on this journey, it's like, that's why I'm able to take the ego away. And I know that I can't do everything myself. Ego stands for edging God out. Yeah. Because you think you're enough to do it on your own, when in all reality, you're not. And being able to, you know, put that ego to side and cast it away so that you can embrace the help when it comes, when it's presented to you, is something that's been so big. And that's part of the reason why I do these podcasts too. It's like, part of it's like, I also want to help other young people, right? I don't want to, you know, wait until I got there to, you know, start helping out. It's like, yo, I don't know where I'm really headed to. I mean, I have direction now. But when I first started off, I didn't know where I was going with any of this stuff. I just knew I just didn't want to take the traditional track. And it's like, hey, everyone, I'm going on this journey. Come on along with me. I don't know where we all heading out to, but we going somewhere, and it's not going to be over there on the traditional track where most people are headed. It's going to be somewhere else. I don't really know where we're going, but like, let's get it going. So like, that was for me when I first got into this stuff. Is once I discovered personal development, it's like, man, I've been able to grow leaps and bounds mentally. And although my business isn't where I want it to be right now, I've been able to make so many amazing connections, meet so many amazing people, and just deposit so much goodwill that I don't have any worry, because I know it'll all work out in my favor. That's why it's like, no matter how deep into the red I get, or how deep, it's like, it's also partially, it's like, manage your money and stuff like that. So it's like, I'm not saying be financially or fiscally irresponsible. That's a whole nother conversation. But I'm saying just like, no matter how bad it gets, it's like, I'm always in good faith and good, because it's like, I know I'm good. Like, the stuff that I'm putting out there and the connection. So I love your story, man. I love how just vulnerable you got with us and share with us. So let's get into it. So now you're 24 years old, right? You're making 6 figures a year. You broke the big dream. And one of the biggest things is that we are not meant to stay stagnant for long. Once you stop moving, you're virtually dead, right? So it's like, we have to keep moving on. And you got to the summit of one mountain. What was it like once you realized that the game of life isn't to make it to the summit, is to keep on climbing? So it's like, what was it like once you finally hit that 6-figure goal that you always wanted?
That's a really, really good question, because there's something called going towards your goals, going towards what you want, versus going away from what you don't want. Does that make sense? Yeah. See, when you're going towards what you want, you're focused on your goals. When you're going away from what you don't want, you're looking at what you don't want, trying to get us further away from what you don't want, but your focus is still on what you don't want, if that makes any sense. Yeah. And I didn't understand that until I became a certified mindset strategist, right? Until I actually got certified in coaching and all that. And I was like, that's what I was doing. So when I hit that $104,000, and a lot of people are gonna resonate with this. I've made 6 figures. What happens is when you hit that, and then it's like you've hit that club, and it's like, okay, you can't fall back, right? Like, for a guy like me and you, it's like, okay, I hit that, and it's like, we got to keep doing it, because it's like letting ourselves down. I'm not going to go back to below what I know I can do, right? So I've never made less than 6 figures since I was 24. Okay, so what happened was, I was going away from what I didn't want. So I was young. I was a young guy. I was only 24. So it was only 8 years ago or 6 years ago, prior that I was sleeping in trains and going through all of that stuff. So my focus was so like, okay, I made it. I built the house, right? We had our 4th kid. We were on our way to our 4th kid at this time. we had built a house, and it was like, oh, I got this great life, and I plateaued for a few years. And here's what I was doing. I was focused on what I didn't want. I didn't want to take my family back to New York. I didn't want to take my family back to the hood. That wasn't what I wanted for my kids and myself, right? And my wife. And so I was focused on that. So what people usually do is we self-sabotage, and I was doing this. So I was doing well, I was making a little money, and then I would take and I would self-sabotage. So I would go and make bad decisions. All this happened unconsciously, by the way. I would go make bad decisions financially with credit cards or this, or just make bad decisions. And then what that would do is that would motivate me to get my ass back to work and rev up that engine that you and I have of that achiever's mindset, right? Because I would get complacent. So that was because I was focused on what I didn't want. And then I realized that that's what I was doing. And instead of focusing on what I didn't want, I needed a bigger vision and to focus on what I want only. That's behind me already. You follow what I'm saying? So now my vision is so much bigger and greater than me. When I hear people talk about, I'm 45 years old, when I hear people talk about, I'm going to retire, right? And I'm like, I don't know what that means. I don't know what that would look like for a guy like me, right? I don't know what you're talking about, right? For me, I'm thinking about my grandchildren, right? My great-great-grandchildren. I'm thinking 200 years down the line. Everything I do, right? Everything I do within my business is about the legacy that I want to leave for my grandchildren. Because, John, I think about those days. I remember those days. I don't spend much time thinking. I remember those days coming up and asking myself, why aren't we rich? Why do those people live in Park Avenue and have all those nice things? Why aren't we rich? Why couldn't my grandfather, why couldn't my dad have done something to leave us, to have a better life for us? Right? So for me, it's now my duty to lift up my name, to lift up my family name, to lift up and make it better for my children, my children's children. But it's not about making it better just financially. It's more so about making it better by teaching them the values that got me here so that they can maintain it. Not only maintain it, I've already talked to all of my kids and said, whatever I leave you, this empire that we're building, it is your responsibility to double and triple it during your lifetime. And then it is your responsibility to teach your children to double and triple it during their lifetime. And this has to be passed down from one generation to the next generation because someone's got to start it. And if it's to be done, if it is going to be done, it's going to be me. If it's going to be handled, it's going to be me.
Man, you touch on, as I said, you keep on bringing up amazing points. And one of the first ones that really resonated with me really is when you mentioned earlier about how pretty much it's slipping in my mind. So I'm going to go to the next one that I wanted to bring up because, man, you're touching on so many good points. But if you said that you want something that gets passed down. So the average inheritance only lasts 3 generations, right? The first generation creates it, the second generation maintains it, and the third generation loses it all, right? It's like, how do we break from that cycle, man? Because it's something that it's been lost over and over. And we hear all these names like the Rockefellers, the Morgans, all these different peoples like that's whose dynasties have lasted years and years and years. It's like, how do we, the people who grew up not really having much, start getting this going? Because it's one of these things where I see it's like so many people that started from the struggle, they get to the top and then it's like, well, I don't want my kids to go through what I'm going through because I don't want them to have to go through what I went through. But what you went through made you who you are today and allowed you to accomplish everything. And it's about the journey. So it's like, how do we help that next generation? Because I'm probably your kid's age, if I'm not mistaken, right? I'm probably right around your kid's age because it's like, how do we, and most of my listeners are around your kid's age as well, or most of my listeners also have kids. So it's like, how do we continue to let that on without trying to discredit or downplay or hide the struggles that we went through to where we got to today? Because at least for me personally, I'm very big. Like I have a photo wall here with all my memories, right? Like everyone from college and high school and all that stuff. And it's not to like sit back and like reflect like, oh, I wish I could, change something. But it's just like, to knowing that each and every one of these memories accumulated into the person that I am today. And one of my favorite Drake quotes is, sometimes I wish I could go back in life, not to change anything, just to live a couple things twice, right? If someone always asks, like, John, what would you tell your younger self? I wouldn't tell my younger self anything, right? Because I don't know how that would affect the chain of events that led me to where I am today. I don't know that I would be helping people who I am now. I don't know. It's like everything. The only thing I do know is that all those events led to who I am today. And it's like, I wouldn't discredit myself. So if someone were to ask me like, hey, John, would you want people to go through the struggles you went through? I would say yes, wholeheartedly, because I know that I came out a great person because of those events. And although it was time, there's a quote that I love too. It's like, too much is given, much is required, right? So it's like, I'm thinking, it's like, if I'm going to be having this massive blessing to come, right? I know that there's going to be a lot that's going to come with it, that's required for me to obtain it. And this is just steps along the way to obtaining it. That's how I see it. So if I go through these hardships, I don't see it as like, why me, God? It's like, I know why it's me, because I'm chosen, right? So it's like, well, how do we embed that into the next generation so that we could continue, to grow this wealth and this wisdom, right? And not just have things crumble after the third generation.
I'm going to share a couple stories with you. Share one story about 10 years ago. Right. So I have 4 kids. They're all 2 years apart. And one day, my oldest Chris was about 16 years old. Right. So we're young parents, my wife and I. I'm lucky. I'm blessed. I know I'm very blessed, right? That I'm with a woman. I have all of my children with one woman. That was one of the things I committed to as a young man. My dad had a bunch of children. I think you and I both relate to that. Bunch of children, bunch of different women. A lot of Dominican men do that. And I made a decision early in my life as a young man that I wasn't going to do that. I was going to have all my kids, one woman, one house. I was going to raise my kids. So one day I come home, my kids are 16, 14, 12, and 10. And I have this nice big house. And the kids, we had this great big pool in the back, have 4 acres. And we're blessed. We have a wonderful life. And I go home and everyone is, the kids have the Wii, they have Xboxes, all this stuff, all the games, all the things, right, you can think of. And I come home one day and I'm looking around and and I'm like, man, am I hurting my kids or am I helping my kids? Am I helping them because it was the struggle that made me strong? And one day my office is, she was one of my mentors actually, where I rent my office. She's one of my mentors, one of the biggest real estate investors in the area. Her property manager needed a cleaning company because they were doing a shitty job at the office buildings. And I said to her property manager and her, I was like, Kathy, I'll open up the cleaning company, let my kids do it. Because my thought was, if I teach my kids work ethic, but the toughest of them all, right? Cleaning toilets, cleaning bathrooms, vacuuming. Now it's attacking. Now the ego goes down. They become humble. And that's what we did. We opened up a cleaning company just for the building, just so that to go clean my office building. And twice a week, we would come, everyone load up, you vacuum, you mop, you clean the bathrooms, and everyone would tag team. And everyone saved their money. My son bought his first vehicle, his first car from the money he earned from cleaning toilets, right? So my second graduated from Penn State, also the same thing. And my daughter, she was a little different. She had some money, but we were smarter, so we were able to coach her better. And that's one of the ways that we did it, right? So one of the ways we taught them to struggle was like, hey, we taught them a few lessons. Like first of all, you honor and respect all people regardless of the job that they do, right? Regardless of the job that they do. You remember you used to be the cleaner. So now when we go to resorts or we go to these fancy vacations, man, you got to see these kids, man. They really respect the cleaners. They're just down to earth because they remember how people used to look at them as the cleaners, right? How some people used to look at them. Fast forward, right? So now I have this real estate firm, and my youngest son, he's 20. I think he's about your age. He comes to me, he's like, Dad, I want to work with you. He comes to me, he'll be 21 just July. He comes to me when he's 18. He didn't want to go to college, and I'm like, okay, come. He said, you're going to start at the bottom though, right? You're going to start at the bottom. Because I realized that the most important skill that I have is my ability to sell, is my ability to influence, is my ability to communicate. And I said, you don't start at the bottom. And one of my managers going to lead you and train you. So he thought he was going to come in here and he was going to be the boss and he was going to just run shit because I'm the owner and I'm the CEO and all of this, right? So no. We got to start at the bottom. And I remember one day, John, not too long ago, about a year ago, my son coming to me wanting to quit because it was hard as hell, right? He was going on appointments, on sales calls, and, you know, he looks like me, and we live in the mountains, and people threatened to shoot him. People kicked him off the property. We're making, you know, we're real estate investors, so we can't pay retail for properties. We're offering 60, 70 cents on the dollar, 50 cents on the dollar on property. And he's going through these hardships. And I remember taking him to Subway one day for lunch. I said, son, I know you want to quit, but I promise you, you will thank me beautifully one day for what you're going through, this journey you're going through. And I said, I'm going to bring you up. I know you want to buy real estate and you want to do flips and you want to own your own portfolio. You're not ready yet. You first have to master this. Once you master this, then you move on to the next level. And I'm proud to say he bought his first investment, his first rental at 20. So he beat me by a year because I did it at 21. I bought my first property at 21. It was a house. I was living there, but he bought an investment. So he's way ahead of me. He bought his first investment this month, April 11th, and it's about to be rented. And he's got his first capital on asset. And of course, he was like, Dad, I understand now. He thanked me and said, listen, you're going to go through more struggles. So don't thank me yet. Because we're just getting started. You just moved up to the next level. So my point is, John, that my vision is, again, this is all part of my plan. This is all part of my plan to bring my family into my business and teach them the business so that they can then learn it, take it one day and teach it to their children. Because you see, 90% of millionaires worldwide, John, 90% of self-made millionaires worldwide are made through real estate investing. When I figured out that's when I said, I got to go into real estate because this thing I have inside of me, this desire, this thing that you carry and I carry. And by the way, it's a gift. Not everyone has it. You know, you hear women complain, a lot of women in your generation, Gen Z and a little bit older than you, these men, and it's not that, man, it's that guys like us are different, and guys like us, you know, it's just guys like us got what God gave us. It's what God gave us and what God put inside of us. And there's nothing wrong with a guy that doesn't have what I have or you have. There's nothing wrong with them. It's just they're different. They have their own strengths. Like my oldest son doesn't have what I have. He's not like me. He's not a driver. He's more of a passive guy, and that's okay. You know what I mean? That's okay. Just find your strength and build on that.
Man, I think that's such a big point because so many people, like men right now, it's like we're going on a downhill spiral, and everyone who disagrees just hasn't read the statistics. But it's like men have less testosterone. Men are like just becoming more, you know, just feeble, weak, both physically and mentally. Right? It's like we've been heading on a downward spiral for a while now, and there's, you know, big reasons behind it that we probably won't get into today's conversation, but it's like they've been pretty much tearing us down for a while now, and it's like just getting worse and worse. And so it's like the thing that we have in us, it's a rare gift to begin with, right? But it's like also there's something in all of us, and I love that you mentioned that we all have our strengths, and so many people are too busy looking at the next man's hands, right? So many people are so busy looking at what he has and that the charisma and all that stuff, and it's like, man, we all have different strengths. We all have different gifts that we could use. For example, like maybe that person may not want to invest in real estate, right? They don't want to do fix and flips, but you can go, let's say, go paint and then make $100,000 making paintings and then use that extra money to buy some property, right?
Or to invest with a group like that does it, and you don't have to be hands-on and get a return on your money. There's a lot of
exactly, but it's all about the game is to move from the. I'm pretty sure you probably read like Clash Quadrant. It's moving from the E and the S to the investor, to the employed and the self-employed, to the business owner and the investors, because that's where the real wealth starts getting into place. That's when you start being able to not only have money, but you have the time and the freedom to take the vacation with your family. And I love the fact that, you know, you took your kids and you made them humble, because there's a quote that I love that talks about it and what we were talking about. It's like, hard times breed strong men breed easy times breed weak men, and the cycle continues. And it's something that it's never ending. And these people, it's like, they fail to realize like some of these tried and tested, things. It's like, this has been a cycle forever, man. And we're in a cycle right now where we had easy times for so long, and easy times, as you said, in the cycle breed weak men. And it's like, we're in that phase of the cycle where, man, we have to prep up now. We have to get ready now for what's to come, because as I said, it has been easy for a long time and people tend to get complacent. And one of my friends, he always says, complacency is a friend of the devil, right? And it's like, you dance with complacency, you dancing with the devil. And it's just like, you gotta, as you said, stay on that, stay hungry, stay, strong, stay. So it's like, you're prepared for that stuff. So I love how you're raising your kids, and something I aspire to when I have my kids one day. Like, I want them to work in a restaurant. I want them, assuming I have a boy, like to play football, because like all these things help make me who I am, and all the hard times, the grit, the perseverance, the like. Man, I still remember at the restaurant I had to clean the toilet one time, and we're not gonna get into all the specifics, not to gross anyone out. But man, it was bad, man. It gets nasty when you have a restaurant full of drunk people and they use the toilets, man.
By the way, I bought a restaurant too, and my family worked it. I failed at it. I'm a terrible restaurant operator. But we learned a lot, right, as a family. So the kids worked it. They made pizzas. And they came day after work and they delivered. So these are some things that it's just like, hey, man, you guys are involved and be a part of this. And I want to touch on something you mentioned, Khan, if it's okay. While we're here, and I want to talk to your audience directly, because you got audience, they're young and young men. God put something in my heart. And, I've been 26 years with my wife and 21 years married. And in observing a lot of exactly all the things that you nailed that's happening with young men, and realizing that a lot of these young men don't have real men in their life to be their model, to give them like guidance, to give them, hey, what is it to be a man? Like, is there anything like that? So anyways, God put in my heart to start a podcast, and I'm kind of just like I'm going to do like 1 or 2 episodes and see how it goes. And I want to talk to guys like you and get your feedback. And the point of the podcast is exactly this. I've been 26 years with the same girl, 21 years married, 4 children. I have a successful business, doing well for myself, and raised 4 children. And I consider myself to be a masculine man, but that doesn't mean I'm toxic. That doesn't mean I'm an asshole, right? Right. And so I want to create a podcast where I'm talking to young men and giving young men guidance. Actually, remember that thing I told you that I'm creating? 15 lessons I've learned, the top 15 lessons I've learned as a 45-year-old man. Lesson number 1, right? Lesson number 1, I'll share it with you because I'm writing it down. And I'm going to record it on my birthday. It's actually my 3-year anniversary for my podcast. And it's going to go live on my birthday. My podcast. Thank you. And lesson number 1 lesson I've learned is find your purpose early as you possibly can. Your purpose in life as early as you possibly can. Because once you find that purpose, that's your guiding compass on everything that you do, right? Whatever that purpose is, whatever that God put in your heart, you got to figure that out as soon as you possibly can as a young man. So I want to create this podcast where I talk to young men about values. What is it to be a man? Like, and I was talking to my 20-year-old kid, right? My 20-year-old son the other day. He came to the office and I said, son, I'm thinking about this thing and this is what I want to do. Then he got so excited because he was like, there's no one really doing something like that. Because I'm not going to do this ranting bullshit of accusing feminist women and all that shit. I see a lot of these guys on YouTube and this is what they're doing. And that's not what I want to do. Like, that's not what I want to do. I'm not going to do that. Like, I see these guys, and no disrespect to you, a bunch of young kids talking about how to get women. Dude, Negro, please, you don't know how to talk to women. You don't have game. All you know is how to freaking swipe right or left. Like, we had to have game. Like, we had to spit game. Like, we would go to the club and we would have to go get numbers and get rejected 7 times. Like, that's a muscle you built. And as a man, you need to develop that muscle because that prepares you for life, that prepares you for success. And it tastes so much better when you get the girl that tells you there's no way in hell I'm gonna get with you, and you just stay persistent and you get the girl, right? And you get because of your game, because of your persistence. So anyways, I want to talk about those things. I want to teach young men about those things. I want to talk to young men about, hey, what are some values that you should or could live by? Like, what is it to have integrity? What is it that makes you feel like a man in your core when you do what? And I want to get your feedback on that. I'm thinking about doing something like that. What are your thoughts on a podcast like that? You think that and it's for young men, it's not. And by the way, the theme is going to be in a cigar lounge with other older, successful business guys my age or so, and some young guys, and we'll bring some young guys on, and we're going to talk shop about the things that are affecting young men today and what we think of successful older men, how they should navigate.
I think it's an amazing idea. Like, one way to dismantle a society is to attack the men, right? That is, if you want to tear a society down, and that's what's taking place now. In this podcast, we're recording this now in May, so it's going to be a little bit while before it drops. But as of this past few years, since the pandemic, since this woke movement, this woke feminism movement and stuff like that, as I said, it's like we have, as a man, like as men, have been getting torn down and just bashed, and men feel ashamed of being men. And we're being taught all these other things from people who aren't real men, real masculine men. And it's like, there's so many false idols to follow, and people try to guilt trap you, and group identity, the group identity politics and all that stuff. And it's like so much things tearing men down. You realize even before all this woke stuff started happening, men already always felt like there's never a place to share and express. So like, even before all this woke stuff, I think it's definitely well needed. Now, post all this woke stuff, it's needed. It's desperately needed, man. Just be able to chop it up with other guys and just talk game about, and have a safe space to just share your thoughts without, like, for me, like, I keep it so raw. Like, I could care less about, cancellation and stuff like that. Cause like, in the grand scheme of things, like, to get a little philosophical, like, you move out, you zoom out big enough on this world, bro, we're all like dust for the most part. So it's like, most of these people in, 100 years, bro, they won't exist anymore. And most people remember, most people won't even come to our funerals in the grave, no matter how big we end up getting, right? Just like, I live my life in a way where, like, I could care less about what other people have to say and think, because, like, the people who resonate with me will find me. Like, for example, we connected, right? There's no coincidence. It's all for a reason. It's just like, I think I'm very long-winded myself, but long story short, I think it's something that is well needed and would fall into open arms by the male, especially young men community.
I just want to talk about. I just want to talk about the things that are important and how young men are feeling. My son gave me a bunch of things. It was like, mental health is a big one for young guys right now. How to talk to women, right? Like, man, nothing against you guys, you young guys, man, but you guys, it's all digital, and that's cool. It's easy to get some. It's a lot easy. It's a lot easier than it was for us. We didn't even have internet, right?
Yeah.
But that doesn't build you up. That doesn't build muscle. That doesn't make you feel like a man. That doesn't, and how do you deal with women telling you that they don't need you, right? Like, that's a big thing. I don't need a man. But yeah, you do. You do, because I'm the one that, I'll share a quick story with you. It's kind of funny, and it's kind of graphic, and I'm gonna end with this, right? One day we're having dinner in my house. My kids, my oldest is 16, my second oldest is 14, and we're having dinner, and all of a sudden I'm like, yo guys, I'm like, to my oldest, I'm like, dude, why are you in the bathroom for an hour and you're killing the hot water here, right? I was like, yo, dude, I know what you're doing in there. You know that, right? Right? I know what you're doing in there. And I looked at my other son. I was like, you too. Every time you go in there, I know what you're doing in there, right? And my wife got so mad, and I started teasing them, and I made up some names for them. I don't want to share it here. Little graphic, my point is that my wife couldn't have that conversation. My wife couldn't call my sons out on that, right? My wife couldn't call them out on that, but I could, right? Because I'm a man and I've been there, right? Yeah. My wife couldn't teach my boys how to talk to women. I did. I taught my boys how to talk to girls, right? Yeah. My wife couldn't teach my boys how to shoot a basketball, but I did. As strong as she is, as independent as she is, as awesome as she is, she can't do any of those things as effectively as I can. She's not cut that way. She's not built that way. She's not built to understand what's going on in a 20-year-old mind or a 16-year-old mind or a 14-year-old mind, young man's mind, because you've never been there. So you can't teach them how to be a man. So yeah, you need me. Regardless of how much money I make, you need men, women.
100%, man. I think that's a great way to, man, where can we find you at, Martin? Where could we connect with you? Where could we hear more about what you got going on? And then we have a quick rapid fire round. So we're going to go lightning fast.
Yeah, let's do it quick. Yeah. So you can hit me up on Instagram, The Elite Strategist. Just go there, hit me up, find me there. You can look me up on YouTube, The Elite Strategist, look me up there. And go check out my podcast, Latinos in Real Estate Investing Podcast. I'm bringing really high-level investors there. I teach people how to create wealth. I teach people strategies. If real estate is your thing, you want to learn how to create wealth through real estate, just want to learn how to create wealth, go there, check it out.
All righty. In that rapid fire round, what is the most impactful lesson you've learned in life?
Be true to yourself.
What is the most admirable trait a person can have?
Integrity.
If you had to change someone's life with one book, which book would you recommend?
Magic of Thinking Big by David Schwartz. Changed mine.
And what is the legacy that you're trying to leave behind?
Generational wealth. And
for anyone that wants to embark on their walk to wealth today, what is the first step you recommend they take?
Educate yourself. I'm not talking formal education, whatever it is that you want. I'm going to give you the formula. Decide, commit, take massive action. That will give you success.
All righty, Martin. Thanks again for hopping on, brother. It was a pleasure connecting, and just, man, I genuinely love talking to you, man. It was great catching up.
Appreciate you, brother. Thank you.